Welcome to the Rational Egoist. I'm your host, Michael Liebowitz, and with us once again is the great philosopher, the great objectivist, the radical for capitalism, the all-around wonderful human being, Professor Andrew Bernstein, but I guess we can call him Andy. Welcome
Yeah,
back, sir.
yes, yeah. My students have to call me Dr. Bernstein, but everybody else can call me Andy. Thanks for the compliments, Michael. It's always good to be on with you.
So we're going to be talking about, we're actually going to do a little bit of a series here. We did it in the past on the history of philosophy, and now we're going to do it on a series of movies and maybe even books down the line where we analyze them in the with the backdrop of Ayn Rand's theory of art or romantic realism. The movie we have today to discuss is one of my all-time favorites. It's Judgment at Nuremberg, and wow, what a movie. So give us the quick rundown on what the movie's about, and then we'll really get into it.
Judgment at Nuremberg. Well, I agree with you, Michael. This is. I mean, I've seen a lot of movies. I'm a big movie guy. I think this is one of the greatest films ever made. Directed by Stanley Kramer with a cast that you can't even believe. We'll discuss. It's about the trial of the German judges, the judges during the National Socialist era, and the attempt to establish their culpability for the crimes of the National Socialist regime, and it raises all kinds of moral questions, and it's a superbly done film, and it really shows a great there's great gravitas here, taking as a must the Nazi war crimes, the crimes against humanity, very seriously, including these judges, one of whom portrayed with very quiet dignity by Burt Lancaster, who knows his own guilt, and he's a fascinating character in the story.
Yeah, very, very complex. When I first saw the movie years ago, I liked it because it raises questions. It doesn't just create an obvious moral conclusion for you. You can kind of see the various points of view, and I mean, it raises questions. How far does one's guilt extend? For ignoring crimes or not speaking up to criminals or the immoral, or you're just associating with immoral. It raises questions about how far, if you're going to be a rule of law, what is the judge's role? And it also, in the end, in my view, demonstrates the absolute vitalness of a life lived by principle. And they just broke it down incredibly. So the character that you just started with, in my opinion, Andy, there's three characters really that the movie is about. I mean, there's a lot. It's an all-star cast. There's all kinds of
That's
people in it.
amazing. Let me say one
Yeah,
thing before you continue, Michael.
sure.
Maximilian Schell as Herolf, the defense counsel, won an Oscar for his performance, deservedly so. He was magnificent, and he points out the broader culpability here.
Yes,
Winston Churchill, American industrialists, the Vatican, people who helped
yes.
Hitler's regime along the way. How far do we go? In condemning people for their guilt. It's a fascinating and important question.
Just to show that great minds think alike. That's actually one of the things I wrote down because I wanted to read the speech he gives. And this is what Hans Rolf actually says. He said, "It is an easy thing to condemn one man in the dock. It is easy to condemn the German people, to speak of the basic flaw in the German character that allowed Hitler to rise to power, and at the same time positively ignore the basic flaw of character that made the Russian sign pacts with him, Winston Churchill praise him, American industrialists profit by him. Ernst Janning said he is guilty. If he is, Ernst Janning's guilt is the world's guilt, no more, no less." And wow, what an indictment, because you have to say it's accurate. But is that the same thing as the judges who sentenced innocent men to guilt? And was their guilt the same as the man who ran the concentration camps, or the people that ran the crematoriums? And it's a very complex thing. And
Mhm.
I mean, you get the answer in the end, I believe. And I was going to say, and you brought one of them up, it's really about the complexity of three characters. There's Hans Rolf, the defense attorney. There's Ernst Janning, the tormented, once principled judge who's now being charged with betraying his principles. And then, of course, there's Spencer Tracy's character, which is just what a great character. He plays Judge Dan Haywood. So I think maybe we can go character by character, if that's okay with you, and we can, see what they did, what they said, and then analyze them within the framework of objectivism. Neither one of us, of course, are are experts on art, so we'll do our best to attach the romantic realism, label to what we're seeing, whether it fits or not. But really, just overall, the objectivist ideas I think are important. So,
Right.
Ernst Janning,
Well,
he
let me just jump in here for just a second, Michael,
sure.
and just if people haven't seen this movie, there's all kinds of spoilers here, for them, because when we can't not discuss the ending of it. I just want to point out the casts, the
Oh,
people
sure.
involved. Stanley Kramer, of course, directed brilliantly. I think Abby Mann wrote the screenplay, which is brilliant. And then you have Spencer Tracy. Look at the cast: Spencer Tracy, Burt Lancaster, Richard Widmark, Maximilian Schell, Marlena Dietrich, Judy Garland. I mean, it's an amazing. So
William
who am I
Shatner.
forgetting? Oh yeah, Captain Kirk is a young Captain Kirk is
Yeah.
1961. Young Captain Kirk, William Shatner is in the movie before he became a TV star. Oh, Montgomery Clift. What a scene when Maximilian Schell cross-examines him on the witness stand about his feeble-mindedness and the feeble-mindedness of his mother. I just break down crying, at that scene. It's so emotionally wrenching. But
Yeah.
before we go by the characters, the movie itself as a story, it's 3 hours and 10 minutes, and it just goes by like that. I mean, it's just gripping. It's so dramatic. It's so
Yeah.
powerful. And the moral conflict here. And Hans Rolf, the Maximilian Schell character, does a good job of standing up for these judges morally against the overwhelming evidence of Nazi evil. And the moral conflict in the story is compelling. If you haven't seen it, I would say to your audience, Michael, see it yesterday.
Absolutely.
See it. It's one of the best movies ever made. It's available on Amazon Prime for free.
Yeah. Yeah. I watched it on Tubi for free. So yeah, it's great. But the situation you're talking of is the guy gets on the stand, and he, of course, I don't know about of course, but he was sterilized.
The Montgomery Clift character.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
the claim was, well, he's feeble-minded, and what the Hans Rolf character did was to quote Oliver Wendell Holmes,
Right.
of course, saying one generations of imbeciles is enough. And what he does
It's not funny, but
masterfully, no, but he really does, is he points out the hypocrisy of the American judges. And this is where you get into kind of a continuum thing, right? Because as Americans, you and I are both patriotic Americans who love the principles upon which this country was founded. But of course, there's also the dark side. And sometimes people get upset when, we bring it up, but it's an irony of condemning the Germans and condemning the Nazis while we have Jim Crow here. Now, I'm not saying Jim Crow is as bad as the Holocaust. And that's kind of the
yeah,
point about the continuum, because they're both evil systems. And
there are degrees of evil.
absolutely. But so Hans Rolf, give me your assessment of his character. It's Maximilian Schell, like you said, and he plays this defense attorney. And well, just you tell us what is his worldview? Because he was passionate in his defense. It wasn't just a lawyer taking a case.
Yes. Yes. And again, I'll repeat, Maximilian Schell won the Oscar for Best Actor in this film, and he certainly deserved it. And I think Spencer Tracy was also nominated, and he certainly deserved it. Yeah, Hans Rolf, the defense attorney, is a patriotic German. And let's be clear. People have a lot to be patriotic about Germany. It's one of the most advanced cultures in the history of the world. And German engineering is a catchword. If we can include Austria, in this Germany, the composers like Bach and Beethoven and Mozart. I mean, the German writers like Goethe, Schiller. The German culture is very advanced. And by the way, we should point out, fairness to Germany, at the turn of the 20th century, if somebody had said there's going to arise in Europe in within 20 or 30 years, this movement known as National Socialism, which is virulently anti-Semitic. Germany would literally have been the last country on the continent that you would have expected. You would have expected Poland, Ukraine, Russia, where the pogroms were, where there was brutal Jew hatred. Leibowitz is a German Jewish name. Bernstein's a German Jewish name. The Germans had much more vastly respected the rights of Jewish citizens for going back to the 18th century during the Enlightenment. And German Jews had become teachers, got educated, become teachers and professors and writers and doctors and so on. Ernst Jani's personal physician was a Jew, as it comes out in the story, So Germany would have been the last place you would have thought that the Nazis would have arisen, and German Jews intermarried with German Christians and everything. So Hans Rolf, is a patriotic German. He's standing up for Germany. He's very opposed to this idea that all Germans are guilty. That he thinks that. What happened?
I don't know. The internet went down, but it's back up now.
Okay.
So
all right.
you were saying
Ernst Jani was a very principled man, like you said, and was a brilliant jurist.
Hold on, hold on, but you were talking about Rolf.
Yeah, but he's standing up. Rolf is standing up for Ernst Jani. He's passionate about what a great man Ernst Jani was, and he was right. Ernst Jani had been one, which makes his treason all the more egregious. But he's passionate I would say about Hans Rolf, that he's passionate in defense of everything good about Germany. He doesn't deny the Holocaust, but he does. I think his fatal flaw, and it's the same one for the Marlene Dietrich character, is that, and so many of the other Germans depicted in the movies, their claims, we didn't know, the German people didn't know, and that's just not true.
And Ernst Jani, of course, says that's not true, and so there comes a moment where they get to this. I don't know how to pronounce the Fiedelstein case, the Finkelstein case, something along those lines.
I forget.
Fiedelstein.
Yeah, I don't remember the name of the Jewish guy. It was Feldenstein. Something.
Feldenstein,
like
yeah. So this guy, he's accused of having sex with an underage girl,
and an Aryan. If that,
yeah.
Actually, that Nazi concept probably has no rational meaning. A German Christian girl.
Yeah, and so they were close because he was very nice to her. She would sit on his lap and whatnot, like a father figure. And that's
the Judy Garland character, right?
Yes, and they wanted to prove, the prosecution wanted to use this as a demonstration of course, Nazi wickedness and how the Ernst Jani was the judge in that case, and therefore, he's guilty. And Hans Rolf basically is retrying the case as the defense attorney. He's trying to show that there was evidence that this illicit relationship took place. And that's when Ernst Jani just stands up and basically says, look, enough is enough. We went through this once, and now you're going to raise he uses the term specter. You're going to raise the whole specter again. And, we don't need to do this. But
Rolf, as a great defense attorney, is browbeating the Judy Garland character,
right,
under cross examination. She's an adult now, but she was a 16-year-old kid when the Feldenstein case took place, and the Burt Lancaster character, Ernst Jani, had been very quiet through the whole movie. He said only a handful of words, and when he stands up, in court, and he says, "Herr Rolf," and it's just a dramatic. It's a dramatic scene.
Yes. So I want to read part of that speech he gives because it's so powerful. He says, there was a fever over the land, a fever of disgrace, of indignity, of hunger. We had a democracy, yes, but it was torn by elements within. Above all, there was fear of today, fear of tomorrow, fear of our neighbors, and fear of ourselves. Only when you understand that can you understand what Hitler meant to us, because he said to us, lift your heads, be proud to be German. There are devils among us, communists, liberals, Jews, gypsies. Once these devils will be destroyed, your misery will be destroyed. And then Ernst Jani goes on. He says, it was the old story of the sacrificial lamb. And this is what really hits me hard. He says, what about those of us who knew better? We who knew the words were lies and worse than lies. Why did we sit silent? Why did we take part? Because we loved our country. What difference does it make if a few political extremists lose their rights? What difference does it make if a few racial minorities lose their rights? It is only a passing phase. It is only a stage we are going through. It will be discarded sooner or later. Hitler himself will be discarded sooner or later. The country is in danger. We will march out of the shadows. We will go forward. Forward is the great password. And what he's speaking of there basically is a pragmatism where he's saying, look, he's not engaging it any longer, but he's saying that that's what happened is they felt Germany was in tatters. And they had this strong man who came along to tell them, no, you're not disgraced. You're not bad. We're wonderful people. We have other people's fault. And therefore, you're going to temporarily ally yourselves with this guy to rejoin the German, bring back the German greatness.
Right, right. And everything that was accurately and properly great about Germany, the commitment to intellectual culture, the commitment to education, respecting the rights of the Jews, welcoming many Jews into mainstream German culture, all of that we're gonna throw out because we're in an economic crisis where we're being have been heavily disrespected by the Versailles Treaty after World War One. We're struggling in many different ways, economically, politically, culturally. We're going to throw out everything that's great about Germany in order to make us powerful. Make Germany powerful.
What were you going to say?
I was going to say a lot of things.
No, but just now, before you said make Germany powerful, you had something on the tip of your tongue, and I think it's important. What were you going to say?
No, I was just going to reiterate.
Were you going to say make Germany great again?
The Trump, the Trump line. No, I don't think it's fair. I know you don't like Trump. I like him a lot more than you do, certainly relative to the Democrats. I don't think it's fair to compare Trump at his worst to Hitler.
No, I don't either.
But make Germany powerful because that's what the Nazis
no,
did.
I just thought you were going to say it and didn't want to bring up the analogy.
Yeah, I didn't want to bring up that whole thing about that whole thing.
No, I'm not one that says Trump is Hitler. I don't think so.
No, that's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous claim.
Yeah,
but make Germany powerful. What was Goering, wasn't it, who later said when they rationed. When they had to ration food because they were on a war economy, and Goering, high-ranking Nazi functionary, said to the German people, "Guns will make us strong, butter will only make us fat." There's a Nazi line. Well, we don't need food, we don't need to feed the people. The German citizens, the honest German citizens. That's a secondary thing. We want to be strong, powerful, and conquer Europe. But yeah, that's what Ernst Jani went along with. He sacrificed his own principles and everything that made Germany, such an advanced culture. They threw it out in order to go into a dark age led by somebody he knew. Ernst Jani himself knew it as a brilliant man. He was prescient in this regard. He knew Hitler was a brutal dictator and, might make Germany militarily powerful, but it wasn't going to end well with that National Socialist regime. You know what's really well done in the movie? You have so many things, and we want to talk about it in terms of Ayn Rand's aesthetic.
We will.
Yeah,
we got plenty. To
do.
Oh
yeah. There's because there's an important point here, but it raises the question. Every man, the German every man and every woman. What did they know? When did they know it? You have the servants who used to work for the Marlene Dietrich character and her husband seem like honest people. They're very eager to please and making Spencer Tracy his sandwiches and everything. And they deny it. They said, we didn't know. We didn't know. There's the Marlene Dietrich character who was married to the German high-ranking German general. She said, "How can you believe this of us? We make music. And she's talking to Spencer Tracy there, and she's raising all these moral questions, and I can't get my mind off of Marlene Dietrich slinking around in that black dress. She's so attractive. I want to take a second to give Marlene Dietrich credit because one, she's a German citizen. She was, she's from Germany. She loved Germany. when she, if I remember correctly, when she died, she had herself cremated and her ashes spread across Germany. But she didn't love the Nazis. She recognized evil of the Nazis. She became a U.S. citizen. She strongly supported the U.S. war effort. They say she spent more time at the front entertaining the troops. She spent more time at the front than Eisenhower. Uh, and uh, and um, and she played a prominent role in this movie, which really showed, I think, it was certainly implied strongly that the German people knew they that they knew what was going on, and maybe they didn't say anything because they're afraid that the Nazis would kill them, legitimate point, or kill their children, legitimate point. But to deny it is dishonest.
Yeah.
They knew, and give Marlene Dietrich credit. She played a prominent role in this
She
film that made
did.
that point.
And I believe she actually at one point asked Spencer Tracy, do you believe me? And he said, I don't know what to believe.
Yeah, exactly.
Because she got all, different information coming at him. But
Yeah,
one
and you
of
see
it,
Spencer Tracy, obviously a great actor. The look on his face in many of these parts, he's like, you could see he's trying to put it all together. He's trying to add it up. He's trying to get at the truth, and you can see that bewildered and pained look on his face. As Spencer, a great actor that Spencer Tracy was.
yeah, it's almost as if he, as the principled man in the story, is the man that Ernst Janning could have been.
Yeah,
The man of principle, because you get
yeah,
the
and
sense from,
Anshanian had been a much greater jurist. The Dan Haywood, the Spencer Tracy character, like he said, was a rural judge in the state of Maine, whereas Anshani was not only a prominent jurist, but he wrote all these books, these brilliant books that studied all over, translated into other languages, studied all over the world. He was a great man. He's a tragic figure in this
yeah,
story.
very
He's
much
the man,
so.
yeah.
And there
Yeah,
were
he's
a
the man
couple,
who brought down wrought his own demise by means of very irrational choices he
yeah,
made.
there was, a few spots in the movie where it was demonstrated his, his caliber and his elevated position. One where he was talking to one of his co-defendants, the prosecutor, and the guy said something to him, and Ernst Janning said, "I remember a day when you would have, basically got on your knees to kiss my ass." He didn't use that type of language, far too eloquent, but I can't think of what he said. And now you just talk to me. And when he blasted those guys when he was on the stand, he basically, this is just a Nazi toy, and this a guy over here now cries into his Bible every night. He just condemns them. And I think Marlene Dietrich tells the story of how Hitler actually had hit on Ernst Janning's wife. And Ernst Janning, with all the dignity, said to him, he said, I don't remember why he said he says, I don't dislike you because something. He said, I dislike you because you're bourgeois.
Yeah, I don't dislike you because you have poor manners and everything. I dislike you because you're bourgeois.
Yeah.
And Ernst Janning had showed the kind of courage to say that to the Fuhrer,
Yeah.
just to say that to Hitler's face. That can very severely truncate your life expectancy.
Yes, and but as you said, all throughout the movie, Spencer Tracy is just trying to understand. I mean, he's going back and reading statutes and he's reading cases. He's just completely enmeshing himself in the case in German culture because he really wants to understand. The other judges didn't seem to show the same determination to find truth. They really didn't care. And then there's this discussion at the end of the movie. So, yes, spoiler alert, but this to me is just so powerful. Ernst Janning summons the judge to come to see him, and the judge says, "Okay, I'll agree." And he goes to talk to him, and Ernst Janning says, "Judge Haywood, the reason I asked you to come, those people, those millions of people, I never knew it would come to that. You must believe it. You must believe it." And then Dan Haywood, the judge, with all the condemnation, the moral condemnation that could be brought to bear, says to him, Janning, it came to that the first time you sentence a man to death you knew to be innocent. And it reminds me of Leonard Peikoff in Objectivism, the philosophy of Ayn Rand, when he said to stray from reality at a single point is to play with a lighted fuse. Once you do that, there's no point at which to stop. Or once you accept faith, there's nowhere to draw the line. And it's the principle of the thing that once you agreed to kowtow to the Nazis in that way, and it's symbolic, of course, not just of him, but the entire country, the rest is inevitable. And I just want to get your take on that. What are your
Yeah,
thoughts?
there's the theme of the movie right there in that exchange between Haywood and Yanni, between Spencer Tracy and Burt Lancaster. Both of them, by the way, Academy Award winners, and deservedly so. Not for this film, but Spencer Tracy for other films, Burt Lancaster for Elmer Gantry. But yeah, great, powerful scene between these two powerful characters, and I think so. So it's there's the climax of the story, very dramatic, and then Spencer Tracy character walks out in the prison, out of the prison, and I think that's the story's theme is just what you said. Once you kowtow to evil, once you compromise with evil, once you accept evil as part of your own life and profession, then the heinous crimes that follow are logically inevitable, and you're culpable. You're responsible for that. I think that's the theme of the movie, very powerfully expressed. When you get that exchange that you just read at the end of the movie, after 3 hours of courtroom drama and back and forth, yeah, I mean, you have to be made out of stone to not be powerfully moved by that scene.
Yeah, it's
And by the way, right before that, Hans Rolf comes to see Haywood and tells him, in like 5 years or so, everybody you just sentenced to lifetime in prison will be out of prison. They'll be released, given the logic of the situation and the geopolitical circumstances with the Soviet Union blockading Berlin at this time, and we're being pushed to the edge of war with another totalitarian state, and we need Germany to support us against the Soviets. In that geopolitical climate, Hans Rolf said it's very logical that they'll be released.
that's another great point. Is
Yeah, you
that
need
the character, the steel of the character of the Spencer Tracy character?
Yeah, he
And
tells Ralph,
Haywood.
he says, what you're saying is probably true. And at the end of the movie, as he's walking out of the prison after that great exchange with Yanni, you get the graphic up on the screen that this is 1961, so it's 13 years after the trial. Nobody that had been sentenced to life imprisonment 13 years later was still in prison. Perhaps some of them had died, but the rest of them had been released. And Spencer Tracy says to Maximilian Schell, Dan Haywood says to Hans Rolf, that's very logical, in this set of circumstances. But
Yeah,
it
well, there
isn't
had been
right.
pressure on
But it
him,
isn't.
right?
But it isn't right. He
No,
says.
and there was pressure on him
Yeah,
to not come back with a guilty verdict.
yeah, and definitely not a life imprisonment sentence. You give them extenuating circumstances. You give them 5 to 10 years or something because of the geopolitical situation, the escalating tensions with the Soviets, who the movie doesn't really show it, but it implies that the Soviets are just as bad and just as dangerous as the Nazis, which they were, and they needed West Germany support against the Soviets. Otherwise, the Soviets very likely would swallow up all of Europe, which is also true. And you're not going to win the support of the German people by condemning and sentencing to life imprisonment some of their heroes like Ernst Jani. And Dan Haywood understands all of that, but by God, justice is going to be done here. These guys are going to get what they deserve, and we're going to be America at its best. We're standing here for truth, justice, and the American way. And
So where do you rate this now? We'll get into in the Ayn Rand romantic realism framework. Where is this a romantic film, and why?
can I make another point before I answer?
You can do
the
whatever
Michael?
you want. You're the star of the show here.
Oh, thank you. Because a big moral question in the movie, and more broadly than the movie, is the culpability of the German people. What did they know? When did they know it? All of they seem like honest burgers generally, but they're all denying that we knew anything about it. And the cook at the start she says to Spencer Tracy, and if we did know, what could we do? That was her husband, I think. He says, and if we did know, what could we do? Now, that's an honest point. What could you do against Hitler? You're going to speak up, you're going to get killed. If you have kids, they're going to get killed. So fear, I can understand them not. Let's put it this way, Michael.
Sure.
If I was a German Christian at that time and I knew what was going on, I don't know that I would have had the moral courage to stand up against
Great
Hitler.
point.
Because not only they kill me
point.
and they kill my wife, we have a daughter. They're going to kill her too.
I've had this kind of argument with a lot of people in relation to both the slave trade, the Holocaust. It's real easy in 2024 to condemn somebody for how they behave in those situations. And I'm speaking even of, for instance, the Jewish capos in the concentration camps. You're seeing people their families getting killed. They're getting killed. You're starving to death and scared to death and seeing people tortured. It's real easy to say how we would act when we're not in those situations.
Right. And speaking of Ayn Rand, before we get to the aesthetic points about the movie, the moral point, that morality ends at the point of a gun.
Yes.
When the Nazis have a gun pointed not just at your head, but at your daughter's head or your son's head, all the moral blame, 100% for whatever it is you do or don't do is on the Nazis.
Yes.
At that point, not on the honest citizen whose life and family's life about to be killed if they contradict, if they do things or say things that clash with the Nazi belief. And I think the military has an expression for people who stand up anyway. It's called courage above and beyond the call of duty. And there's I just happen to have a book here that on heroes, legends, champions.
Oh my goodness, what a surprise! Who wrote that book? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, this is my book. We should discuss it at one point on the show.
Sure.
But I bring this up because the White Rose, to me, may be the greatest heroes in history. You familiar with the White Rose at all?
No.
Most Americans aren't, and we should be. They're better known in Europe. The White Rose were kids. They were like college kids, medical students. Hans Scholl, his sister Sophie Scholl. They were German Christians. If they kept their mouths shut, the Nazis would not have hassled or harassed them and all. But they recognized, this is 1943, they recognized the evil of the National Socialist regime. They recognized what was being done to the Jews and to other innocent human beings. They stood up, they mimeographed sheets and spread them all. This was in Munich, the heart of the National Socialist power structure. They mimeographed sheets denouncing Hitler, denouncing the Nazis, calling on the German people to rise up in support of freedom. Then they had to know the Gestapo eventually were going to catch them and what would happen to them. And they were. They were captured. They were tried. Were not allowed to speak at their own defense in the trial. Convicted in a kangaroo court of a Nazi show trial, and a couple of days later they were executed. You know how the Nazis executed them? They guillotined them. And they had to know. The White Rose, these kids had to know what was going to happen to them, and they stood up anyway. And that's amazing. That's extraordinary heroism.
Absolutely.
That's above and beyond the call of duty. But every man and every woman, I don't think I had that kind of courage. I don't think I could have done it. But what I would have done is after the fact, once it was safe, I would have acknowledged, yes, I knew, and I didn't have, well, I had at least had inklings of it, because like Aunt Johnny says, of course we knew. Every railroad station in Germany had proportions there or elements there to feed the cattle cars with God knows how many thousands of Jewish victims and other innocent people. Of course we knew. I would have at least had the honesty to acknowledge afterwards that, although I don't know that I would have had the courage to stand up against the Nazis. Although you never know what you're going to do when you're really confronted with evil. You might get so morally outraged that the moral anger may overcome the fear, and you might stand up anyway.
That's very, very true. So, romantic realism, the aesthetics of the movie, where do you think it stands?
Well, was Ayn Rand's great line that art is the recreation of reality in accordance with an artist's metaphysical value judgments. Everything in this movie is brilliantly stylized to dramatize one important point, and that is the quest for justice, the life and death importance of justice, to bring justice no matter what else is at stake, whether we lose the support of the German people in the struggle against the Soviets, or I'm going to be personally unpopular in Dan Haywood's case, whatever it is. The pursuit of justice must be an overriding moral concern. I think there's the theme in the movie that everything is integrated brilliantly for 3 hours and 10 minutes of intense courtroom drama. And you can see the way it was stylized to integrate that point. The Stanley Kramer, Abby Mann, and all the people who took part in this movie clearly show, at least in this film, an overriding concern for justice.
Sure.
And they stylized the film brilliantly to show that.
And the characters clearly, I mean, it's not naturalism. The characters are, they're making choices. They have free will.
Oh, yeah.
And they're, even the Hans Rolf character, they're fighting for their values, for what they believe, for what they think is right. And I think you're absolutely correct. I put this squarely within the romantic realism. One could argue, well, but it's it's a malevolent universe premise, because they said what was going to happen was that justice was going to become unraveled. But sometimes that is what happens. I mean, even Ayn Rand and We the Living, Kira dies.
Yeah.
Spoiler after spoiler. It's killing.
Romanticism, as Ayn Rand defines it, is exactly what you said. It's the school of what that recognizes the principle of volition, that human beings have choices and they make moral choices. And she holds up Victor Hugo as the greatest novelist in world literature. Now, I think Ayn Rand is the greatest novelist in world literature, but Victor Hugo is,
it's close.
His magnificent novelist. And usually his main characters are all killed, by the end of the story. The fact that it's romantic doesn't mean it has happy endings. The fact that it's romantic means that human beings are dramatized as being in control of their own destiny and making life and death moral choices. And it has that drama, of life and death moral choices. And this movie embodies that brilliantly.
Okay, so it comes highly recommended from the great Andy Bernstein, Dr. Bernstein, to his students. And also comes highly recommended from me. I saw this movie the first time, I think maybe 10 years ago. And after seeing it, I remember saying, this might be my favorite movie. This movie is great.
The commitment to justice and the brilliant artistic means of dramatizing that make this a standout all-time great film.
Okay, only one question remains to be answered. If you and I are Siskel and Ebert, which one are you?
I haven't seen Siskel and Ebert in years, so I don't remember
where can people find you?
Well, my website, andrewbernstein.net, and of course on Facebook. So I'm on Twitter, LinkedIn, but andrewbernstein.net is my website, when they can find out about my books and essays, including my book on heroes,
which eventually we will get around to discussing.
Yeah, I was always a hero worshiper, so writing this book was was a labor of love for me. And they can find andrewbernstein.net. That's my website. That's the best place to go, Michael.
Awesome.
And of course, on the Rational Egoist, any number of episodes.
Yes. Right? Oh, yeah. And a lot more to come too.
Yeah, more movies in the future for us, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
This is fun.
It's great. Plus, we get to watch great movies and call it work. So that's wonderful.
Right.
All right, Professor. Thank you so much for being with us again.
Thanks for having me on, Michael. It's always a pleasure.
For now, this is the Rational Egoist signing out. I'm Michael Liebowitz. Until next time.